Okay, so you want to own an auto repair shop. Cars break down constantly, repairs aren't optional, the way a lot of purchases are. And once a customer finds a mechanic they trust, they keep coming back for years, bringing their whole family with them. It's one of the most fundamentally recession resistant small businesses in America, generating steady, recurring demand from a product nobody can simply decide to stop needing. That is the dream, and it is not entirely wrong. Here's what it doesn't tell you: this industry's single biggest financial risk isn't a slow month or a broken lift. It's how you choose to pay your own mechanics. Because the wrong incentive structure has already destroyed one of the most trusted brand names in American retail history. And it happened at a company with far more resources and oversight than any independent shop owner will ever have. Let's start with what it costs to open one. A lean, one-bay shop with basic equipment can launch for as little as $50,000, while a fuller multi-bay operation with premium tooling commonly runs $200,000 to $500,000. Equipment alone is the largest line item, with a full setup of lift, diagnostic scanners, compressors, and hand tools running $75,000 to $150,000 new, though two-post lifts alone range from $2,000 to $10,000 each. And a comprehensive mechanic's toolset can run $15,000 on its own. Leasehold improvements to fit out a rented garage space add another $8,000 to $64,000, and initial parts inventory typically requires $5,000 to $30,000 before you've serviced a single vehicle. Monthly overhead for rent, insurance, and supplies commonly runs $10,000 to $20,000, and most realistic financial models show a working capital cushion well into six figures is needed just to survive the ramp-up period, since first-year revenue for a new shop typically lands in the $150,000 to $500,000 range, with a break-even point of 12 to 24 months. Before you turn a single wrench, licensing, insurance, and zoning permits add their own layer of cost and delay, and most experienced operators recommend leasing rather than buying major equipment when possible, since it dramatically lowers upfront capital requirements at the cost of ongoing monthly payments. Gross margins in the industry run genuinely strong, 50 to 65% on labor and parts combined, which is exactly what makes this business attractive on paper. But that healthy margin sits directly on top of a compensation decision every shop owner eventually has to make. And it's the decision that determines whether your business builds decades of customer trust or destroys it in a single scandal. Here's the trap sitting underneath the entire industry, and it's baked into the most common way: shops pay their mechanics. Commission and quota-based pay, where a mechanic earns more the more repairs they complete or the more high-margin services they sell, is standard practice across the industry because it genuinely does drive productivity and revenue. But that same structure creates a direct financial incentive to recommend repairs a customer doesn't actually need. And because most customers can't independently verify whether their brake calipers or shock absorbers genuinely required replacement, the information gap between mechanic and customer is close to total. A shop owner doesn't need to instruct anyone to lie. The commission structure alone can quietly push honest employees toward recommending more than a vehicle needs, simply because that's what the pay plan rewards. Once a shop is running properly, the revenue model is straightforward. Labor billed by the hour or by flat-rate job pricing is the core, typically the highest margin line item since parts markup, while real runs thinner once wholesale cost and competitive pricing pressure are factored in. Diagnostic fees, specialty services like alignments and AC work, and recurring maintenance contracts round out the revenue mix, and repeat customer relationships, built purely on trust that a shop tells them the truth about what their car actually needs, are the single biggest driver of long-term profitability in an industry where marketing spend matters far less than word of mouth. Now, the disaster case study, and it remains one of the most studied consumer trust failures in American retail history, specifically because of how large and reputable the company involved was. In June 1992, California's Department of Consumer Affairs announced the results of an 18-month undercover investigation into Sears Auto Centers, the largest auto repair chain in the state with 72 facilities. Investigators found that Sears employees had recommended unnecessary repairs in 34 out of 37 undercover visits, overcharging agents by an average of $223 per visit, and in some cases by as much as $550. Customers drawn in by advertised $48 brake job specials were routinely told they also needed new calipers, shock absorbers, coil springs, or master cylinders. Parts that investigators found were often in good working order with less than 20 miles of use. The root cause wasn't a rogue employee or a single bad location. It was Sears's own compensation policy, which paid service advisors and mechanics based on the number of repairs completed and set explicit sales quotas for high-margin services. Exactly the incentive structure that quietly pressures honest employees toward unnecessary work. Facing 41 state investigations and a threat to revoke its license to operate in California entirely, Sears eliminated commission-based incentives for service advisors within days of the story breaking. The company ultimately paid roughly $15 million in refunds, settlement costs, and consumer education funding, resolving 19 separate class action lawsuits while never formally admitting liability. The damage to Sears's reputation in the auto service category, built over more than a century, took years to even partially repair. Years later, California regulators pursued a similar case against a 22-shop Midas franchisee, whose mechanics had run an advertised brake specialist bait before charging customers hundreds more for rotor resurfacing they didn't need, resulting in a $1.8 million settlement and a permanent ban from ever holding an auto repair license in the state again. Both cases prove the same underlying point at different scales. The exact commission structure that makes an auto shop profitable is the same structure that, left unchecked, can destroy the trust the entire business depends on. Let's run the numbers on two scenarios. Optimistic case. You open a $200,000 two-bay shop, paying mechanics a strong flat hourly wage with modest, capped performance bonuses, rather than uncapped commission tied directly to repair volume, deliberately removing the incentive to oversell. You build a loyal, repeat customer base, generating $400,000 a year in revenue against operating costs of roughly $250,000, leaving a genuine $150,000 annual margin. With a reputation for honesty that compounds into referrals and repeat business for decades, the single most valuable asset an independent shop can build. Realistic case. The same $200,000 shop, paying mechanics on a standard commission and quota structure to maximize short-term productivity and revenue, exactly Sears's model at a much smaller scale. Revenue looks identical or even stronger in the short term, since commission-driven upselling genuinely does increase billings. But an unhappy customer, a state investigation, or simply a competitor undercutting you on price and honesty can expose the pattern, and a single documented case of unnecessary repairs, amplified by online reviews in a way Sears never had to contend with in 1992, can permanently damage the trust your entire local reputation depends on, turning a strong quarter of billings into years of lost customers who now tell everyone they know to go somewhere else. So if you decide to own an auto repair shop, understand what you're actually buying. You're not just buying a recession-resistant business with steady, recurring demand, though it genuinely can be that. You're buying a business that runs entirely on an information gap between what you know about a customer's car and what they can verify themselves. And the compensation structure you choose for your own mechanics determines whether that gap gets used to build trust or exploited to inflate a bill. Pay for honesty. And this remains one of the most durable relationship-driven small businesses in America. Pay purely for volume, the way one of the country's largest retailers once did. And you may find that the fastest way to grow revenue this quarter is also the fastest way to lose your entire customer base the moment anyone finds out.